7, rezoning RS 100 medium density single family residential to BG general business. Typo.
This project, this subject property is located just on the southeastern corner of Sugar Ridge Drive and Highway 20. The applicant proposes commercial development with retail, office, and or proposed retail, office, and restaurant uses on that site. The future land use plan shows this area in a commercial node, and similar analysis applies on the nodal development to punctuate at median crossings. It's a use that makes sense in terms of the future land use, and it's a logical extension of a existing commercial node. The planning staff recommends conditional approval with the 4 conditions shown in the staff report. At the planning commission meeting, the applicant conceded 4 other conditions that are described in the summary of the public comments. Basically agreeing to withdraw the restaurant use, limit the height of the buildings to 2-story. Sorry.
So we'd incorporate that into conditions?
Well, planning staff hasn't changed their recommendation. Let me summarize the other 2. Apologize for this. No buffer reductions and 2-story canopy buffer reductions, and just one building so that they could allow it to be serviced with septic. Staff did not update our recommendations. I actually believe that probably 90% of the community wants a restaurant somewhere on Highway 20. The opponents on Sugar Ridge Drive have some concerns about safety related to drunk driving that were described, and potentially congestion and access. A lot of those are mitigated through engineering with site design, and the 2-story cap on the building is an effort to kind of mitigate the mass and scale of those buildings, but there are office buildings very close that, while not 3 stories, they are built with a gabled roof system that has that similar height. They may have access to those, areas above the second story, I'm not sure. But those are that's the basic rationale for staff not updating staff recommendations for those conditions.
Okay, you have anything else? No. All right, thank you, Kaipo. Any questions for Kaipo?
You left out one thing from the planning meeting. That the residents were very concerned about the lighting on the signs, and they wanted y'all to address that condition. They were going to delay the vote, but they had already delayed it for months, and the developer offered a pretty good deal. Also, the developer conceded no restaurants because it's on a septic system, and they didn't feel they could develop it there, so he took that off the table.
Thank you.
But their last concern was about the light from the signs bleeding over, if you could address that.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Kaipo?
I just wanna make sure that I understand what the recommendation is and whether or not we're going to be incorporating that feedback from the planning commission with the no restaurants, the 2-story cap, you know. Yes. And part of that was the buffer between that property and then the south side with the single family that abuts it, to go back to 50 feet. So all of that would need to be incorporated into the recommended actions. And then I agree, if we're gonna have, something there that's got signage or whatever, that we need to be respectful of the folks that live right there in front of it, to make sure it's addressed properly. I think that was my only other issue, was just to make sure that the recommendations from planning were incorporated if they're going to be part of the conditions.
So it's the discussion of the planning commission and then the results of the public hearing, the comments of the public hearing. Okay. Go ahead, Mason.
I've got a few questions, Kaipo. So first of all, the image that we're looking at right here, I'm not sure if the public is seeing the same image, but do we have an updated site plan? Because listening through the explanation here, it looks like the development has changed pretty drastically, but I'm still looking at 2 buildings, restaurant, retail, so it's hard to kind of discuss what it's gonna look like if we don't have an updated image. Do we have that?
I did not receive an updated site plan from the applicant.
Okay. Do you have an updated square footage of what the new 2-story single building would be?
It's office building 1, I believe.
Office building 1, okay.
That's the one to remain.
Do you feel, just kind of here, so marrying the two as far as the shared interests of the community versus concerns and conditions, do you feel like there's a way with the revised plan to have any kind of restaurant element to it, or do you think that that's just not feasible, based on what you've heard?
Sorry, I should clarify, the retail restaurant office building, I was reading off the label. So I think a restaurant use is possible. You do the engineering and you go through the approval process for the sewerage, and if it's permittable and buildable, it can be done, either now or in the future. I mean, we are making a decision on the zoning that I know of. There's no pending development applications or sewer or septic approvals for either of the uses that are proposed. All that goes through a process, and
So let's just kind of hone in on part of on the topic of septic versus sewer. Is there a way for this project to be sewer instead of septic, or is it just based on how the plan lays, it's got to be septic, right?
there is sewer in the vicinity. I don't know installation wise, if this system could connect to that system, you know, potentially if it's higher, it could be pumped. Those are all to be engineered and to be priced.
Let's take care of mayor and council questions first.
One other question, that I've got here on the 12-foot pedestrian path. One of my concerns, so I like seeing, obviously, the greenway be extended. It'll be great to connect to Ridge Lake Park. One of my main concerns though is when you have the greenway or path, whatever you wanna call it, right next to a busy road like Highway 20. And while it does provide pedestrian access, it's definitely not ideal. So I think this is more a statement of council, something we may wanna consider as far as a condition is to have some kind of, especially if this is a reduced footprint now, but have some kind of requirement where it's more offset off the road or goes on the backside of the property or something like that. Not sure what our options are from a topography standpoint, but I think it definitely provides a much safer pedestrian experience as opposed to, bikes, scooters, kids, etc. walking around the side of Highway 20, even if you've got a 12-foot path. So that's just my thought.
Yep.
Hey, Coco, last question, and I might be getting really into the weeds, and it's okay to tell me that. With a single building now on the property, does the existing septic that was part of the residence that's currently there, does that have to be re-engineered to handle the load from, poor choice of words, from a commercial building? Okay.
Yes, you're definitely in the weeds.
Okay, I mean, I thought so, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to find all the flaws so that I can answer all the questions, you know what I'm saying, so, very good.
Taylor, go ahead.
I'll just make a point about septic and restaurants since we're talking about. There are hundreds of restaurants that are on septic systems. That's not unusual. You have a grease trap. It's no different than a restaurant that's on sewer, except it goes into our sewer system instead of a septic drain field. The grease is out through a grease trap. It's a pretty straightforward process, and just through a site design. I share Councilmember Roswell's concern about the location of the greenway. I think we need to maybe look at some improvements to Sugar Ridge Drive too, if this is gonna be commercial. Getting a right turn lane out of Sugar Ridge Drive, so folks that are making a left, that are coming out of here, don't back traffic up, or they don't start shortcutting through the development to make a right turn on Highway 20 versus back up at Sugar Ridge Drive. Those are some things that we may want to consider, if this application goes forward. Otherwise, I think that was my only point, other than, I do have concerns about the buffer reduction in the back. I don't see that justification for that buffer reduction. But it would be helpful to see what that new site plan in concept, if we're gonna go to one building, would look like. I think that would be helpful for council to see that. I think it improves the site by going to one. I think it's a much better site plan for this if we go to one building. So I think I believe the applicant needs with a better site with one building than two. And other than that, I think this node commercial that they're showing here is, I think that's something that's important for folks to be able to get to that are nearby. I am concerned about removing a restaurant possibility here, but I'm also concerned that this is speculative commercial. So I'd be curious if the applicant has a tenant in mind, or if this is purely speculative.
I think it's purely speculative, but they could probably give you better.
Is the applicant here?
Yeah, if you want to just state your name and your address, please.
My name is Ethan Underwood. I'm an attorney with the firm of Miles Hansford Talon. Our address is 202 Triple Gap Road in Cumming. We do appreciate the opportunity to present this. The limiting factor always has been sewer, and we understand that. There is sewer across the creek to the east of this property. The problem is you have to go down and back up, and we can't get Gwinnett station. So right now, septic is going to be the limiting factor. We did agree to reduce the building size and to eliminate the second one. Frankly, we're gonna have to put a septic field there probably. It's not that much of a gift, but the four things that the planning commission recommended, and we did tell the neighbors that our client would agree, was build a single building. We're happy to get you a new site plan. I'm always hesitant to do that just because people say, well, wait a minute, you changed the plan on me. So at the city council's direction, we'll get you a new site plan to show that. But with, we agreed to cap it at 2 stories, did agree to withdraw the variance. The original intention of that is there is a right turn lane from 20 onto Sugar Ridge Drive. And we were just trying to make sure there was enough stacking capacity so people weren't backing up onto Highway 20. So we moved the access drive as far south as possible. But now with a single building that will be squashed, I think we can do the 50-foot buffer and move that access drive further north. So we'll withdraw the variance request.
Restaurant.
Let's see, as far as the lighting goes, we're gonna comply with the city's ordinance. I think it caps at 2 candles or foot candles at the boundary line, so we'll comply.
Point 2.
Is it point 2?
Point 2.
With whatever the code is, we'll comply with the code as far as the lights filter requirements go. And if you would, you have to remind me your other questions.
Any other questions that you wanted the applicant to address?
Is this building speculative, or do they have a tenant that is interested?
Our client, this is his first commercial building. He has built several other residential developments. He has a daughter who's a physician, and so he was wanting her to be one of the tenants in it, but he was looking for additional tenants. So yes, it's a speculative building. The intention is to have one tenant, and it would be a multi-tenant building. So we don't have a restaurant lined up, and we don't have a particular user. We will defer to the city council's judgment on whether to require or allow a restaurant or not. We did state to the planning commission that our client would give that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Under BG, now I know that this would be a sit-down restaurant, but under BG, we don't, do we allow the drive-through? And I know they have to come back for a variance if they use the speaker.
Drive-throughs are not restricted in general business and standard use provisions.
Okay. So we wanna make sure that we went to a restaurant, that we made that go away, because we wouldn't want that there.
Just one other thing, so thinking about, since there's not really a exact tenant in mind or whatnot, this is kind of a combo question of signing and lights, but I know that, from a light standpoint, some of the digital signs, especially at night, are very bright. Is that something that's permitted in our current policy? Is there have to be a variance? And to council, maybe that's something, that came through to prohibit that, based on the fact that it's, right there by residential, and those do put off quite a bit of light at night. And that's not what you typically think of as light, or I wouldn't, but, just, when you're in a residential area like that, it would make a pretty big impact.
Any idea when?
Okay.
One last question, and so,
Let me get an answer
Oh, go ahead.
to that, so.
We have regulations for both site lighting and the multi-message signs.
Okay, so the condition.
thank you, Mr. Anderson, for discussing the restaurants on septic. My question is really around, over the last 10, 15 years, have we approved any new development on septic? To the best of your knowledge, you don't have to have the exact answer right now.
I'm struggling to think of new commercial development that's been approved on septic, but
Not city.
Self-storage facility, it's got something, I don't know. It's going on right.
that is true.
Okay. 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 just something to think about, so if we can get an answer before next week, I'd appreciate it. Any other questions?
One other thing, it sounds like the applicant might need direction. I for one would like to see an updated site plan.
Before our next meeting.
Yeah, just to kind of really understand where things are positioned.
I think he agreed to that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what our recommendation, I just
Yeah.
confirm.
Perfect. All right, nobody has anything else? All right, let's move to number 3.